Are you ready? Okay. Do you want to bring us in?
Yes. I'll say yes.
Just so everybody knows.
So
I think it's just going to be a song. So
awesome. We can wait for Emily if she wants, if it's going to be fast. Okay. Amazing. So thank you to anyone listening, and thank you artists and owners and artists of the gallery. I'm Luke and Emily. So this is the artist panel for Nothing Gained, Nothing Gained. The whole, sorry, I almost forgot to talk into the mic. The whole point of this whole gallery and this whole endeavor was kind of driven, I think, by people attempting to do things even when they're incredibly difficult. And I personally have kind of seen that journey with Luke and Emily putting together this gallery. So I think I'd like to start off with introducing everybody. I'm Yael Meegan. I'll be moderating. Luke, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, my name is Luke Mannarino. I am one of the co-founders and members of the Vitalinformation Collective. I am also an artist, and so Vitalinformation Collective, we're a zine publishing collective of artists and activists based in Crown Heights, and we have a love for printed material, and we are interested in telling the stories and bringing together creatives and also just folks that we know who have really interesting stories together. And we do that through the scope of this exhibition and also through our printed zines. Vital Information is made up of, of course, all of the artists here, but mainly it is myself, Emily Addison, who is my co-curator, who is busy working, and she'll be joining us later, and Yael Meegan.
Hello everyone, my name is Raphael Barnes. I am a Brooklyn-based artist as well as service worker. I work in Crown Heights, but I live in Bushwick, so I'm in this area a lot. What should I say about myself? My art usually concerns modes in which my background rather is in anthropology, and so the art that I do often has to do with subject matter in which anthropology and artistic interpretations can be fused, and I'll get into that a little more later, but nice to meet you all.
Hi everyone, I'm Darla. I'm the owner of this building, this gallery, and I'm also an artist. And one of the gifts that the lockdown gave me was the courage to open this gallery.
Hello everybody, my name is Huascar Cruz. I'm part of the neighborhood, I'm part of the community, a painter from the Dominican Republic. Friends with Vital Information. Thank you so much guys for having us here. Thank you Darla for giving us the opportunity to tell a little bit of our stories and our concerns. Yael, thank you so much for doing this, for giving us the opportunity to talk about what we do and what we're trying to show to the community.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so I think I'd like to just kind of start from the beginning. I'm going to ask Luke just to talk about what the process was like getting together this gallery and what you hope to get or give from this.
So this project really was started back in, we started Vital Information last September, and this show, the conception for the idea started back in December. I was at home, and I actually, honestly, to say where this really came from, I was actually watching this TV show, and there was one of those late nights that I was just really sort of thinking about, I was really thinking about this idea of, you know, going after your goals, and I went into a hole and was just writing, and the name Vital Information, actually, it's funny, it was or not Vital Information, excuse me, Nothing Dared, Nothing Gained, the title of the exhibition here. It was actually the name of a hardcore band that I used to see at Roller Kingdom when I was 14. But I really wanted to just find a way to put together all of the artists that I knew in the neighborhood who were really, really talented, and many of them who I felt like I needed to just really be seen and be given a platform. And, you know, I wanted to really pay homage to these folks, to Raphael and to Huascar. And when we met Darla, I feel like that was the sort of the perfect match, because, you know, you welcomed us into your space so amazingly, and you came at a moment where we were having some immense difficulty. And so, you know, it made us feel better, because we really wanted to be, you know, I used to work in Crown Heights as well, at Barbenchino. And so, you know, it was really important to Emily and I that we made sure that we were in the neighborhood working. And so, you know, I wanted to really just show a range of different makers and thinkers, and just give space for people to, you know, show art and try things out, you know. And we also have, you know, musicians that'll be performing this week, and, you know, sort of giving another space to be able to, you know, activate and remind people to, you know, take a look at, you know, to think about the kinds of people that they are around every day, you know, whether it be the people at your restaurants, whether it be your neighbors, whether it be just like an interesting person on the street. And yeah, we hope to do more with, hope to meet much more folks in Crown Heights as well.
Thank you, Luke. So, in keeping with the title of what this show is about, I'm gonna pass the mic to all of you and ask you to tell me about a moment when you had to overcome something. And if you can tie it into your work and your art, that would be amazing. But just we're really trying to celebrate, I think, people doing beautiful things, even when there's so much, whether it's, you know, a pandemic or constant racial violence or police brutality, how people still manage to do things that are so beautiful. And you guys are those people who are doing beautiful things.
I love this passing the microphone. It makes it so interactive. I have to say it, I really enjoyed this. Story. Well, I live in the neighborhood for over 10 years. I've seen the community changing. Also work in the neighborhood, and big part of releasing the stress of the day as a server was me having those beautiful days off that I could spend in my studio painting. And it's been so engraved in my head, like every day, that I ended up documenting what's going on in the neighborhood. The Caribbean Parade is one of the most beautiful examples. We have this mix of all communities dancing in the street for a day. It's impossible not to be influenced by. Personal experience, I feel it's been a very kind community. And it's welcoming for today, welcoming to all the transplants that are coming to the neighborhood. It's beautiful to be able to live in an area that has everybody from all backgrounds, and also being able to make a living in the same area. Seeing places like the gallery that it opens, it's an opportunity for us as a community. Like I said before, I don't necessarily have a bad experience. It's been all a fantastic and interesting journey.
Have you had to overcome anything? Has anything been like, I know like you are a super positive person, but like, has it ever been difficult to be like, all right, I'm gonna make this piece of art today, even though Crown Heights has
Oh my God, yeah. Being completely honest, I remember working in a restaurant, I'm not gonna say names, and asking one time to the manager that I deserved three different salaries because I found myself being the Latino representation, the gay representation, and the Black representation. And I remember thinking, it's Crown Heights. There's so many people in need of work in the same area. Why don't we get a Black girl to be the hostess and somebody else to be, the bartender? Like, let's enjoy the variety instead of trying to create a little like piece of Boston's without offending Boston, like in this place. Like we don't need an oasis. We just need to like keep communicating. So yeah, those little things. But again, the community, it's so nice and made it so easy for us that I hope and I see it more often, more variety, which is what I think it's important.
Um, well, there have been a lot of challenges, but the most recent one, and the one that I was consciously aware, oh, sorry, the one that I was consciously aware that this was a different way to handle it was 11 years ago, this building caught a fire. And it was a drastic fire. One of the tenants died in the fire. And I remember calling one of my spiritual teachers and telling her what's going as I watch the fire trucks do whatever and the firemen do whatever they do. And she said to me, and I did not hear anything except out of this, only good can come. That's all I heard. And I held on to that. And 2 years later, the insurance paid out. I started reconstruction. And one of the tenants moved back in, and the apartment became rented, and everything was flourishing. Yeah. And then 8 years later, the pandemic hit. And again, I'm faced with the financial situation. What do I do? Out of this, only good can come. And I ask myself, if that is true, that out of every situation, you have a choice to turn it around, turn it to your advantage, no matter what. Even if money was not the object, if money was not the thing that was stopping you, what would you do? And it was like, I would open a gallery. But I don't know anything about a gallery. I have no idea. So I'm talking to a friend, another one of my spiritual cohorts, and she said to me, like, what is there? Put some lights, paint it white, and hang your painting. That's it. That's it. And that's what I did. I put some light, paint it white, and hang my painting and opened the door. And I called my lawyer because I needed insurance. And then she started asking me a bunch of questions like, what's the name? I don't have a name. Gallery. That's the name. Gallery. Name it gallery. And it was like, okay. And then I think it was Luke that called it Darla Gallery. Was it you? Darla Ebanks?
I took it from Takuma's car.
Oh, you did?
Takuma had wrote Darla Ebanks Gallery. So
and I did not like that. I did not like that. I did not like that at all. Okay. So the place need a name. Okay. If I'm gonna be sharing this place with other artists, because that was what was being downloaded. that make it so that other artists could rent this space, even if it's for a week, for 2 weeks, but for a week, this is your gallery. So call it my gallery. Since it's in New York City, my gallery is New York City. So my gallery NYC. That's how the name came by. And I like the idea that when an artist is explaining to somebody, oh, well, where's your work? At my gallery. My gallery. And so that's the story about this place. And I want that other artists, I don't want artists to be waiting for other people to discover them. I want artists to start investing in themselves, putting themselves out there, instead of just waiting for somebody to pass by or to go into their apartment, because the majority of us have our work in our apartment doing nothing. Nobody gonna see it. So invest it, take the first step. If you believe in yourself, you invest in yourself, the world will respond. It has no choice but to respond. So yeah, so that's my aim. I keep my pride, although I'm an artist. I also want to paint paintings that you don't have to be making 60, 80, 90, 100,000 in order to afford one of my paintings. I want paintings to be, oh, you're making 35? Here's a nice painting for $100. You buy a pair of sneakers for $100. Buy a painting that's gonna go up in price eventually when I die. So that's my thing. Keep it low, keep it affordable, but at the same time, don't shortchange yourself in thinking that because you're keeping it low, it's not worth much more. Be aware of that. Be aware that you're good, it's worth more, but people don't know that yet, or the person that making 35,000 doesn't know that.
What was it? It was a challenge you faced, correct? That's the question.
Yeah, and obstacle that you face, and even how that's impacted your art and how you went through it.
Okay. So in life, we all get ahead of ourselves, and we all put a lot of things on our plate. And so the reason I say this is because when I was finishing up undergrad about 2 years ago, I graduated in 2019. So from 2018 to 2019, I had the choice. I was a senior, and so I had the choice of either taking a graduate class or doing a senior thesis. And so I decided to opt for the senior thesis, which was completely independent, except for the fact that you're obviously under an advisor. And what I wanted to do, because the art, I know you can't really see it, but the art that's behind me, my art, has to do with a world that I constructed that had been in development for about 10 years now. But at that point, maybe 8 years, I guess. It'd been a while either way. And I wanted to, well, my plan was I was going to do this full page thesis where I essentially was going to write up these creation stories that I've created for this world. And then I was going to provide exegetical, explanations behind these things. Kind of if you're looking at like a Bible, and there's like this, what do you call it? The subtext under. If you're looking at verses and you see explanations behind what each verse means, that's what I was trying to go for, because what I wanted to do was, what I was seeking or what I was aiming for was a fusion of creative processes with world building, but also trying to make it more, and this is the wrong word, but back then it was always like a fusion of academic and the arts was like my whole thing. And yeah, it was and my advisor would always challenge me and about it and I could never answer him because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just, and that's what I mean by saying I was very hasty because I mean, at that time, it's your capstone, you're like, this is the magnum opus. This is what I want to do. This is going to be it. That was my mindset, was like, this is going to be done. And obviously I will continue this after college, but I thought this was going to be like a big first step in that direction. And in some ways it was, but in the end, I got swamped with other work and life comes at you hard and school and like just getting caught up with everything else. Like, I mean, it didn't end up being what I wanted it to be, my thesis. It did end up being, I did end up writing creation stories and translating them into languages that I created. But the explanation behind it was left a lot more to be desired. And because when I sent it to my advisor like a day late. I mean, I told him that I was going to get it to him by a certain time, didn't, and so I think he was already kind of upset about that. But once he responded back to me, he mentioned that at the end of the day, it really wasn't what I said it was going to be, and I realized that was my fault for being too ambitious in that aspect. But as time went on, I got discouraged. I definitely did. I mean, I was like, if I can't make this story interesting, or basically because I was worried that I got the wrong impression for what I wrote. And so at the end of 2019, I thought, you know what, if I'm not going to write it, then I'm going to just draw it. And so I started in a sketchbook. That's usually how I work. I'm very much a person who likes to draw small first. And people are always trying to push me to go bigger, bigger, bigger. And but for me, it kind of traditionally for me, it has to start smaller. And so, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it was also the fact that larger pieces take longer. And for me, that's another thing, is that I need to stop being so fast paced about everything. But this taught me definitely, I mean, essentially to tie it into the art is that, like, yes, I was discouraged to not continue investing in this because I thought that it wasn't worth it for a time. But I started doing these illustrations before the pandemic hit, and I took a break from it again. And then when I was quarantining in my house, so when I was furloughed from work back in March and April and May of 2020, that's when the graphic novel, or I guess it's a graphic novel in the works within the sketchbook. That's when it really came into being. But then I met Luke, and he told me that he asked me to be in a show, and I agreed that the pieces that I'm doing should be bigger, and it should be, because this is something I haven't done art like this in this size. So this is actually a first for me in many ways. But I think looking back on the process that I've gone through, from being discouraged about writing about these things to coming to a point where I'm happy with the work that I've done, to also eventually come back to, because I mean, eventually I am going to come back to writing these things, and having more so written explanations. So everything, I think, for me is, I've come to learn, is that everything is very cyclical. It all kind of comes back.
We're faced with a lot of obstacles, and it's difficult, obviously, to come back. But you guys have Emily and Luke. Also, and just to rephrase the question a little bit for you two, I mean, you both are artists in your own right, so feel free to talk about how you've overcome an obstacle within your own art. But I would also really love to hear about what obstacles you've personally had to overcome in order to get this gallery off of the ground.
Do you have time? No. And truth be told, you can introduce yourself. Yes. Oh, hello to everyone who's watching. I'm Emily Addison. I'm one of the arms of Vital Information, and a co-curator of the show. Yeah, what were some of the challenges that we faced to get here? I think initially, like, sure, yeah. What do I think? Challenges that that I faced coming into this. I think sort of generally like trying to manage the many moving parts has been I think it's been really sort of gratifying and humbling to do this process, because like when you're doing something that involves this many people, you have to roll with things. And I'm going to jump to it and say we had a different space, and had got all of the moving parts settled. Like we had gotten like the works and the people and all of the details nailed down, and we lost our space. And we're like really at a loss. I think truly the two of us were like, okay, I guess that's we weren't like that's that. We certainly were not like we're not going to have a show, but I definitely was like, I don't know. We don't have the answer right now. And oddly enough, I'm walking down the street with a friend, and we look over, and I live in the neighborhood, like very close by in the neighborhood, and look over, and there's your space. There's your space in what used to be not this space. And so we come in, and lo and behold, it is the space that we are now currently sitting in with the show. And yeah, it was like, I think in the end, a reminder to like be patient and like have a little faith every now and again, because truthfully, honestly, all things considered, you know, we are well loved and well helped and supported. And sometimes things just play out the way that they're supposed to, oddly enough.
Yeah, well, Emily, definitely you hit all the nails on the head with this show and the obstacles that we have to overcome doing this. And I guess I would say personally for me, I'll keep it short and not too sappy, but you know, I used to work in the art world here in New York for a couple of years, and I worked for some really amazing people, and then I also worked for some really, really abusive people who did everything in their power. And this is somebody, you know, when I was living in Boston, and you know, I was studying art there, and I knew from like the beginnings of that I knew I wanted to do galleries and art facilitation, and that I really loved doing this. And so I was working very hard, you know, within that framework of Boston, you know, organizing shows and putting things together, big shows too, you know, with like, you know, big like grids and things like that. And I remember coming here, and the first thing that I said was like, well, no one's going to hire you because you don't have any experience in a New York gallery, so you have to work for free. So I did, and I started that. And I remember the first time I answered the phone in this gallery, and I remember that I went to put them on hold, and I put them on hold, and then something happened with the phone and it disconnected, and I just remember the owner wanting to rip my head off. And I also remember, you know, I'd had other experiences where, you know, it was every day I would go into some of these galleries where I was then paid, you know, later on, where they told me, you know, that I was just, for lack of a better word, that I was just shit, and that I would, you know, that I was useless, incompetent, every word you could think of. And for years, that really, really messed with my head. I think especially, you know, it's very competitive in New York. It's very hard to get jobs. I've probably applied to over 500 art world jobs since I've been here. And, you know, the experiences that I have had that have been positive, I'm super grateful for. And even the negative, I think I learned a lot. But it wasn't, I had to take a break from the art world because I just could not get hired full time. I was always working on contracts, and it wasn't, and being paid, you know, not very well, but being expected to wear, you know, designer things and So for me with this show, cut to, about 3 years ago, me starting to work at a restaurant in Crown Heights. And I'd worked in restaurants for a really long time and thought I was done with that world, and coming to Crown Heights for the first time in probably 3 years, I was reminded that hard work is rewarded. And that was the first time that I had felt that. And I felt that in a space. And so for me, this show has been a process of overcoming and reminding myself that for anybody that it's possible to make it happen, and that it doesn't matter whether other folks are telling you that you will never be good enough and doing everything that they can to block you from access. And so yeah, this show has been letting go of that and sort of a really rebuilding sort of a set of confidence that I haven't had in probably many years.
It's very interesting. So I think I'm going to move on to the two artists that we have here who are featured on these walls. Both of your works I find really beautiful and so interesting in so many different ways. I am a little sad that we couldn't have all of the artists here. Do we have an update on one of the artists? That's true. Thank you to those who can spare time from their mothers to listen in. Yes, thank you. Yes, happy Mother's Day if you are a mother. Huascar, I'd like to talk about your work. So, I mean, we've talked, we've known each other personally. When I think of you in general, I think of somebody who is enthusiastically expressive. You'll tell me a story about your life, and it can be, I feel like if I told the story, it would be boring. And for some reason, when you tell it, it's like beautifully woven and like could be written down in a storybook. I think it's you. But your art also, I don't know, I feel like you're really expressing something, a story that you want to tell. Can you tell me which of your paintings mean the most to you and what you are saying through that painting?
They are my journey. Painting became a great way for me to document what I was going through without speaking about it. There's sad stories, there are the happy ones, and I always try to like keep them in a canvas, keep them in one of my drawings or a collage. You said that you remember me always for my way of my storytelling. I think that that's the reason why they're here. These are the stories that I don't feel like talking about it. It's easier to talk about the happy moments, you know what I mean? It's easier to be perky and have a good laugh. It's easier also to turn a sad story into a happy story in order to be able to tell. These are the ones that I don't want to discuss with anybody, or at least at that moment. When the time for the show came, I was so happy to see the paintings that Luke and Emily chose, because I felt like without knowing that there was a story behind, these are four particular pieces. These are four particular pieces that really defined what I was going through in that particular moment. The girl with the pom pom shorts, it's one piece that I started working in the beginning of the pandemic, and talking about like 5-6 days into the pandemic. I remember looking at the videos of the canal in Venice and seeing how everything was flourishing, and we weren't going through that here. We were all scared, not knowing what was going on. There is a level of sadness and worriness that she carries, and one of the reasons why I treasure that painting in particular is because she was the companion that I had when everything was chaos. Remember one time taking my dog out for a walk, and in one side of the street there were ambulance, and on the other side there were funeral cars. And I'm thinking, this is not something that we're ready for. You know what I mean? We were all panicking, we were all in chaos. And she actually helped me channel some level of peacefulness. Half of her body, it's in dirt because she's kind of like a plant. It's something that she's growing. Also, I wanted to keep the freshness of the neighborhood, and she reminded me so much the girls that walk up and down in Franklin. You know what I mean? Like using African prints as a new ways of westernized the costume. The cut of jeans, boom boom shorts. It's part of like the summer outfit. I don't know. It's all about documenting. It's all about like revealing the little bit of me that I don't tell in the stories that I talk about most of the time. Also, chances are that those stories that you're thinking about, I had a beard too. So we should go.
Thank you so much, Huascar. Huascar, can I assume though that the story that you did tell us, is that really your favorite painting, or is that the one you're willing to talk about?
There's just so much that I have to reveal. If anybody wants to know some more, they can come down to the gallery, take a look, and I'll feel so happy to talk about it. As a matter of fact, they might have to like make me shut up. One-on-one is so much easier.
Thank you so much, Huascar. So, Raphael, your art really spoke to me in a different way. In general, I think the way that we interpret reality and the way that we feel our existence and our reality is just so true, and how that differs. The fact that we can see that it's so different amongst so many different people, I mean, it just shows, it speaks to me on the level of how things are kind of conjured up and made up. And when I saw that your artist bio mentions the word mythical religious, and it seemed possibly you could have some of those aspects in your own drawings, but I'd love for you to just, touch on that idea a little bit and just explain the thought process behind that.
So, as an anthropologist, and when you're studying anthropology, one of the big things that they emphasize to you is that when you're doing ethnography, which is essentially field work, you have to go into these places and into these spaces suspending your preconceived notions. You have to go in, and for lack of a better term, I guess it's more so than an open mind, but it's more so looking and accepting everything at face value. So if you're, say, going to a part of the world in which you are witnessing a religious ceremony and you are writing about it, and I made this mistake in classes when I would be describing religious practices, and I would be saying, they believe, and my teachers would correct me and be like, well, it's not that they believe these things, it's that they actually, it's not a belief, they're not believing and they experience them. There's a difference between a belief and an experience. And so, when I was working on this world construction, I always struggled with this idea of, because if you look at our own world, everybody has different interpretations of what the divine can be, of spirituality. And so when I was going to, in creating a new world, I struggled with a lot, because I was like, are all the people in this world, are all the civilizations, are all the cultures, all the societies in this world, are they all sharing the same worldviews? Are they mirroring our reality, in the sense that we all think different things, or we all believe different things, rather, that we all see the world in different ways, so as not to be so homogeneous. And so I think with the world that I've created, and with the anthropological knowledge, but not just with the anthropological knowledge, because I'm also a spiritual person, and so that also ties into it a lot. the way that I view the universe, the way that I view the universe and the way that I view the divine is something that definitely plays or comes into play into the art itself. Because what I'm doing here is I'm trying to create a world in which, yes, there are multiple different religious, mythical, and I put that word in actually in the bio, in my artist bio, I put that word in quotes because mythical religious to us, because we're looking at this from the outside world and like we don't live in this world, so we'll never it's fantastical, so we'll never experience these things. But in this world, they aren't mythical religious because these things actually have occurred for the creation myths that I was illustrated here in this constructed world. And so the point of that is that or not the point rather, but the mythologies that are going on here, or the single thread throughout the mythologies that I've created is that, yes, there are differing mythological characters depending on the cultures that I've created, but I kind of project my own spiritual view that everything is interconnected in a way. And so that's why in the world that I've created, there is like a notion of a universal energy, a universal, I'm trying to avoid the word God, but in a sense, it is like a unit, because what I'm trying to point here is that within this world, every single society that I've created within the world does have a notion of a higher being, but they're all distinct from each other. But at the same time, they're not, because everything is one within the world that I've created, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a question that is for everyone, but what have you created during the pandemic? And I know everyone has discussed a little bit about that, but maybe along with telling us what you've created, you can give fellow artists or other people who want to create some tips as to how you're still able to be in a creative mindset when you're going through so much stress all around you.
Start looking at creating your artwork as work. You are working. Yes, yes. You're not playing, you're not doing something in your free time. It's no handcraft. You're working. That comes with also a little discipline. That's what actually kept me sane during the pandemic, was being able to wake up and from 9 to 3 o'clock, work on my art, paint, write, something. Not thinking in mind that you're working on a masterpiece, but keeping in mind that it's part of your process, the discipline. Talent, it's a gift. Practice make you really, really good. We all know the art heals. We're all artists here. When we're sad, we create. When we're happy, we create. Why wait for one of those emotions? With a little discipline, we can also create in between, and something good is gonna come out of it. Still, even though that we have the vaccine, we're still dealing with being confined, not being able to socialize. Not just for fellow artists, but for everybody. Get on a sketchbook, grab a magazine and a scissor, collage, paint, write a song. We all have that artistic, energy inside of us. It's way more satisfying than watching TV. I promise you all. Because at the end you see that you had created something. It's so worth it. That the opinion of if it's bad or good becomes, it loses all the power because it's something that you did. The question was,
How were you able to create during the pandemic, and do you have any tips for fellow creators on how to still be able to do that even when you're going through so much stress?
I think that when we first went down, when we first locked down, my first reaction was a physical reaction. Um, okay, go get some groceries, stay in your house. You could exercise in your house. You have the phone, you could call people, and what is there to distract? Let's see how much I could distract myself from being in my apartment. And what I discovered is that my apartment became a place where I could do so many things. I did not have to go out, and I was quite happy. I discovered that I could walk 5 miles in my apartment within an hour. um, I live upstairs. I live upstairs, and this is. Um, I discover um, that my journaling was much more rewarding than getting on the phone and going outside. I started discover I think I discover really what was important to me, and not have um, not be seeking someone else's opinion, or just do what I wanted to do at that moment. Since time was the only thing that we had, what do I do in that moment? I have this time. So what do I do? What do I want to do? I concentrating on my painting. I started um, developing a schedule for my art. My Also, my spiritual work became more intense, and within that spiritual work, everything was possible. I accepted that this is what's going on, and that I can be free even though I'm in an apartment. Mandela did it. Other prisoners have done it. So what it is in me that I have to constantly be going out? Why can't I just sit here and be contented, find my freedom right here? So that's what I discover in this lockdown, that I have the ability of being self-motivated, self-directed, whatever else it is within me. And if I could constantly tap into that creation that is constantly arising, and I could tap into that at all times, the lockdown is just an opportunity, another way of looking at the world and being still. The environment, look what happened to the environment did the lockdown. So I look for the positive in all the different ways that this lockdown served me, and I moved into that. I moved into finding the positive things. Stillness became very important, not just physical stillness, but mental stillness became very important. And now I find that my go-to place when I'm unhappy is my art. When I'm happy, it is my art. When I want to celebrate, it is my art. And always, I discover that I'm either expressing a feeling or trying to find the feeling that is escaping me, the ease and grace that is escaping me because of the mental chatter. The lockdown gave me a lot of gifts, gave me a lot of gifts, and I'm grateful. I also discovered that gratitude is the best place to be. And if you could be grateful for every little thing, you know, wake up in the morning and just be grateful that you have a bathroom. You know, be grateful for your bed and your sheets and the refrigerator and your noisy neighbor. Be grateful for everything. And so that's where I am. That's what the pandemic showed me, is to be in gratitude for everything has a purpose. Nothing is wasted. Everything has a purpose. And I'm living that right now. Mhm.
That's definitely a hard feeling to have in this moment. I mean, for many years, it's been kind of a hard thing to have, but um, thank you for sharing that, because it is a calming place to be able to think about what it is that you do have and what you can contribute and what you can do. Thank you.
Oh, it's a challenge. So I've always struggled with a sense of structure and a sense of discipline when it comes to things that I deem as important, but don't necessarily like. I put a lot of things on the back burner, is what I mean to say. And so with my art, you know, I've been drawing. I've been making art my entire life, but you know, things it gets away from you, and there have been times where I kind of take that for granted, especially like in high school. I remember I was doing a lot of artistic related stuff when I started in freshman year, and then time went by and my art teacher essentially kind of had to pull me back into the class because I wasn't doing anything anymore, and she was like, you're gonna it's not I mean, people tell me you're gonna lose it, and I don't think that. I don't think I would have lost it, but I definitely I was denying myself opportunities. And so I think in the pandemic, I mean, because I had mentioned how I'd started doing these like sketches within this book before the pandemic hit, but my work with it became a lot more intense after the pandemic hit because I had the time. But then at the same time, I think also I learned, and this is I think more so with technique than with anything else, but I've learned that for me at least, whenever I would draw before, I think before now, I would just kind of go at it. I would go into it. I'd be like, well, you know, I'm just gonna like let it flow, and I'm just gonna see where it takes me. But I think I've gotten to a point in my life where it needs to be a little more serious than that. And so, I mean, for example, the people behind me, the first one on the left, it took so much longer than the ones before, the ones following, because I was kind of going at it on a whim, and I think I think that's a great process. I think that's something that's if you do it, I think it's fantastic. But I think because I was on a time crunch and because I think that I needed that structure in my life, I learned that like, and this is probably pretty self-explanatory, but I mean, I wasn't really taught this because I wasn't classically trained in school as an artist. I studied anthropology, but like, you know, really putting down a base layer or putting down like an outline of something actually does help a lot. And especially with the art that I do, because I was looking at say like the techniques that Tibetan monks make tankas, which are the paintings on the fabric paintings with mandalas and tantric deities and stuff like that. All that is traced out beforehand.
all that is, and I mean, it applies, you can apply that to so many other things, but because this work looks like mandala so much, I think, and looks like Tanka so much, I think my notions of having to lay everything out and giving it a structure and then adding to that made things a lot more, it made things flow more quickly, but I think it made things more accessible to me in a way. I think it's because when I was trying to going to do things on a whim, it was very forced. You know, I was very much like, it'll happen. It has to happen. It has to come out of whatever I'm doing, but it wasn't coming out. Like what I was making was not to my liking because I was forcing it. I was trying to do things that that I was trying to go about things in a way that I could have gone about better. But at the same time, I think what my art has taught me over the pandemic is that, so I really embarked into, I guess, my spiritual journey, for lack of a better term, back in like 2018 in the summer. And, you know, I always struggled with a sense of discipline with that too. I mean, I still do, like, you know, I always get caught up in things that I feel like I should, you know, it's always like me telling myself things that I should be doing. With regard to my spirituality, you know, like I'm not doing enough of this, or I'm not doing enough of that. But then I realized that, like, at the same time, the things behind me are products of that spirituality. And I mean, one of my very close spiritual friends told me something this is not even that long ago. This is about like maybe 2 months ago or something. He came to my house and he was like, "How are you doing spiritually? What's up?" And I'm like, you know, things have been on the back burner. Like, you know, I'm kind of just, and, you know, I started kind of beating myself up about it, being like, oh yeah, like I know I haven't really been doing much that I should be doing. And I've been working in this art. And he was like, well, I mean, art's a form of spirituality. So, and I mean, I kind of already knew that, but I think when somebody said it to me, it made more sense. But yes, I think these pieces are essentially a manifestation of spirit flowing. So in a way, I did achieve that flow that I wanted, but it had to come through more structure, as opposed to just kind of on a whim, thinking that things are going to manifest because you want them to.
I definitely can speak to the structure part of like how do you continue to create during a pandemic, because I also like was not working, was unemployed for the beginning part of the pandemic, and I think outside of like time, like working time as structure, like we lost a lot of structure, and I kept being like, the creative, it'll just come to you, and like it, in some ways it did, but honestly, like we're in a really stressful and uncomfortable time. And I found that like designating time, like having to create structure, sort of like Huascar said, like treating it like work, rather than just letting like it find you, really helped me. So even if it wasn't like you're gonna sit down and like do something start to finish, or you're gonna make a piece, or you're gonna design something, it would just be like, this is your 2-hour window, and something will come out of this 2-hour window. But if I didn't set that time, it would be like, well, I could do something else. I could do nothing. Maybe I am going to do nothing. Maybe I'll sit on the couch in my pajamas and watch another episode of insert the TV show here. Yeah, and then setting out that time also made it feel a little more purposeful. Like I'm in a time when things were really like terrible and it was hard to like find that like deeper meaning, that I was able to make that happen. You know, Brooklyn, just not a quiet place. It's not a quiet place that we live.
Oh, I thought it was coming from the speaker.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like sitting here, I'm like, what is this sound that sounds like it's here with us?
Okay. I was so confused when that sound was coming.
Yeah, that's sort of what I mean though, is like, yes, there's no structure, and when there's a lack of time, there's really no structure, and going, this is my time, and this, it also feels meaningful. Like you sit down and so at the end of my like 2-hour window, I have something, and sometimes I look down, I'm like, oh, this is the best we could do. And other times I'm like, oh wow, I like made something today. like that feels gratifying. So definitely like creating the time. And also it's okay to have rules for yourself. I think as creative people, there's sometimes this urge to be like, the muse will just find me wherever. It's like, no, you can have rules. You can go like, now is the time that I need to do this for you.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, I was not very creative in the sense of making art when the pandemic started. I was not, I didn't want to be making art because I think at that time, I just felt like other things were so much more important to me at the time. But I think that those other things that I did were rewarded in the way that I think my art practice rewards me as well. Uh, I was making a lot of other things. I would make liquor, amaro, and I cooked a lot, and I built a little oasis garden on my fire escape, and those things felt good to me and felt like a part of my practice, I guess, as a performance artist. Also, that's just, without being corny and being like performing life, like, I don't know, I think that was really just me sort of setting a space for myself that I was going to feel good in and eventually feel rewarded. And I think that this eventually, when I did start to get itches and wanting to make things again, I think, I learned that I do have the tools and the skills to be able to do things. I think also, it goes without saying, vitalinformation was born because of watching the Crown Heights service industry workers, friends of ours who, the group is Crown Heights Service Industry Workers for Black Lives, and they're an activist group of service industry workers here in Crown Heights that do a lot of protests and actions. They're actually doing one today. And I think with that, I really wanted to find a way to use skills that I already had to really assist in other ways. And I was really inspired by some of what other people were doing. And so, I think that was sort of the creativity, where that creative part came through. And yeah, because I think for the rest of the pandemic, I was too worried. I was too worried about things. I was too stressed out watching the news every day. Was very, very fearful for a lot of my friends. I had friends who were sick that, I was really worried about. And then just generally worried about people that I cared about getting sick. And so I just took the pause very, very seriously for a few months. And advice, I guess, I don't really know if I have the best advice for other creatives, because I feel like everybody else already gave the really good advice of investing in yourselves and having a discipline. And, I think just also, encouraging that, if you make time for it, you can do it as well. And that when you speak something into existence, it will manifest itself into what you want. Because when you speak it out loud and in your life and in your mind, people will gravitate towards that, and your calls will be answered. And maybe not in ways you expect, but they'll be answered.
So to kind of finish this off a little bit, I mean, all the work on these walls, it's so beautiful. Anyone listening or watching should definitely come by and see the messages that the artists have put together through their work. And we have these two artists here discussing, and there are more artists who are not here but also have amazing, beautiful things to say, strong things to say. But I want to ask how you see your art evolving. What do you see for yourself for the future? And also, has that changed? Like, give us some background into that idea. Or also feel free to ignore how I made that question way longer than it had to be. Yes. How do you see your work evolving?
To be completely honest, right now, to be sitting in the work, to think about evolving, yeah, and enjoy the present and being able to celebrate that we're doing right now a show and the neighborhood can see what we're doing and what we're working on. The future, I don't know. I'll worry about that later, I think.
You know, it's funny. I was sitting here listening, and one of the things that I heard, I think from several of you, was a concern about contributing, being aware of what's going on, and being relative um, to what is going on in the world. And I I'm not concerned about the world anymore. I'm not. And I think it comes with age. Like, I'm 72. In my 20s, I used to worry, am I going to have enough money? Am I going to do this? Am I going to be successful? Am I going to create this? Am I going to? And I have discovered is that things work out. Things have a way of working out. So when you talk about my art developing, I'm going to develop because on a day-to-day basis, I'm letting go of something and embracing something else. So as I evolve as a person, my art will reflect that. So I can't concern myself about my art. I'm more concerned about being the person that I want to be. Um, Being a person that is caring is a choice. It's not something that you're born with. It's not an automatic thing. It's a choice that you make. I'm going to be good today, and it starts with being good to yourself. And my art is reflecting who I am. It's not like my art is outside of me. It's reflecting who I am. And that will evolve as I evolve. And relax, life works out. I'm serious, every problem works out. Relax. Takes a while.
It is a practice. Yeah.
Your life. Don't do things that you're supposed to do. Do things that you want to do. You want to do your art. You don't want to go to a job. So make art your job. Make art your job. Sorry.
We all needed to hear that, yeah.
All this was to say that everybody that is watching
It was the future. That's what we're thinking of. Evolving. Well, I feel like me as a person, I've had to learn recently over the past few years that you can't, and again, I guess this kind of goes hand in hand with both of you guys are saying, but I can't get so caught up in expectations of what I'm going to be doing in the future because I'm honestly not sure, but eventually I would hope that these pieces and that the subject matter, or rather the subject matter of these pieces moves to expand and to become, I do want to, oh, my coworkers out there, hi. I do want to expand this to become an actual graphic novel. I do want it to become, I want it to be a book or books, I guess. And that's the thing, is that I think when I say the whole point of my artistic process is to find a way of merging social science and specifically anthropology and sociology with world building, is that, with me, I'm creative, but I'm not really a creative writer. I'm really not that great at writing stories. I'm way better at illustrating them. And so that's why with me, my explanations behind the cultures that I create are going to be very, very technical. They're going to be like, this is an explanation into this, and I kind of want to create like an encyclopedia or like encyclopedic volumes that are both illustrative and also a lot of literary material that explain this constructed world that I've made up. Because I mean, I see the ways in which people before me in these disciplines have gone about it. And I mean, yeah, I'm from a discipline that's historically been very colonial and very imperialist, and there are problems in anthropology that there is no denying that. But I think that me as a person who is trying to fuse these two things, I'm kind of uprooting that from within, uprooting that mentality of within these social sciences. Okay, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, and also I think as I look at my art and as I look at the process, like as I move forward in it, I don't, in the sense that it is a flow of spirit, or that's how I see it. I don't see things about it until it's done. I like. My friends have pointed out, like, a lot of my art is very much just, there's always this sort of idea of dichotomies and splits. And I think that speaks to something larger. I think that speaks to my identity as a biracial person, and not in very explicit ways, but I think that it does have to do with that. It also has to do with, ideas of operating within a secular world when you don't necessarily think completely secularly. Or for, I guess, for lack of a better term, if living in a more so atheistic world when you believe things, when you see things more spiritually. So yeah, I think in the future, I look forward to just seeing, I look forward to hopefully seeing these things become more physical in a book sense, but I also look forward to just seeing because I mean, the art is a product of yourself, and so when I look at the art, I like to see what I project into that without even subconsciously. I'm looking at that and realizing, oh wow, I put that in there. I didn't even notice that. I think it's because there's always more to see.
Thank you, Rafe. I feel like the future for my creative practice right now is rest. I will say, I've said to a lot of people, I feel like I'm not a mom, shout out to the creative mothers of the world though, because I feel like we had a baby. I feel like we like labored and worked and carried and moved around and did the whole nine, and now we're here. And I feel like that's also an important thing that I would like to say to all of the creative people in the world is like, rest is okay. Like, yes. And then probably after some rest, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how I feel after the rest and the recoup, what we feel like in terms of creative process. I think for my own creative process, just like doing it more, and like participating in my own process as a creative person, because I feel like I do a lot of this kind of work, and like professionally as a graphic designer, a lot of what I do is like taking pieces from other people and making them into something else. But I think I'd like to spend some time just making for me and on my own and see how that plays out.
Yeah, well, I can say, I guess, I mean, I definitely agree. I will probably spend the summer working on my own artistic practice as well. And I guess for the future with Vital Information, I mean, I think that, you know, we really want to do more. We want to keep doing shows, obviously, and, you know, meeting more folks and just, you know, and I think for me personally, you know, I'm still loving of all the different forms of print. I just moved and I was going through my apartment of all the zine libraries that I had. And I was pulling out all of these posters and these newspaper type things of these gorgeous works. And so I'm more excited about like finding ways to get people's artwork into more things like that. And so that's what I'm thinking about with the future with Vital Information right now. And yeah, just excited, just, yeah, feeling positive about meeting new people. And I think, yeah, letting go of that and just seeing what happens.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to say, Raphael, if you do end up making the encyclopedia type with your artwork, as someone who loved sci-fi novels that had way too long backstories and stuff, I'm excited. Shout out to the Barnes trilogy. Okay. Does anyone have anything else that they'd like to say that I didn't ask that you feel is important for people to know?
Say it louder, Huascar, please.
Come and visit us here.
I just want to, yeah, remind people. Can I see the catalog actually?
I just want to read the statement out to everyone. Thanks. So yeah, for all of y'all that are around, this show, Nothing Dared, Nothing Gained, is going to be happening for the next through May 16th, which is next Sunday. So you have another week to come check it out. We have Raphael and Huascar, as well as many other artists who are unfortunately couldn't be here today, but often, you know, you will find them coming into the gallery. You know, we have great zines, we have merch, we have prints for sale. We have this, you know, wonderful magazine catalog that Emily designed. We have free things. We have our free resource zines for service industry workers, for Black femmes, and for activists who are sober and sober curious. But, you know, I just wanted to close out, I think, by, you know, I really wanted to read this statement of what the exhibition is about to, you know, sort of like remind everyone to come through and, you know, all right. Let's see. The title is a play on the phrase, nothing ventured, nothing gained, an old business saying that means by investing something, you will gain more than if you invested nothing. Trying will always reward you more than not even trying at all. This is a showcase of artists who take risks. When faced with society's trials, their own vulnerability, and life's obstacles, they channel that energy into something. They channel that energy into what you see here. The capital A art world tells artists that to be successful, you must fall into a set of guidelines. These systems lead makers to believing that success can only be achieved in one way, and that it is through the practices and life experiences of the artists here that prove that those systems will not stop them from telling their stories. Before mainstream outlets and major institutions were looking for artists to fit buzzwords and hot topics of the day, these artists were deeply embedded in their own self-discovery for years, wrestling their identities and practices in their studios or bedrooms between their side hustle jobs that kept them fed and sheltered. It's not just about the work itself, but also the spirit of the artist. It is about their resiliency and persistence as people in the world. It's about how they understand hard work and nothing will be handed to them, so they have to be scrappy and resourceful, and how their work is displayed and circulated. If there is one thing this pandemic has taught us, it is that we need to listen to, lift up, and support the talented people in our own communities, and not the massive brands that watch us from their towers. These people who tell our stories are not always on a screen or glossy pages, but they are our teachers, bartenders, cashiers, and neighbors. They are makers who work and fight like us, and we thank them by giving them the physical space and time to tell our tales. So, 12 to 8 every day through May 16th. Come by, hang out with us.
Any questions from our listeners?
Can you raise your eyebrow more?
We can hang out a little bit maybe and see if there are any questions.
Well, thank you all for listening. She says congratulations.
Thank you. Everyone answered as their personality. Like you sound like sociologists.